Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Because in your application, you indicated that you don't yet have a Bachelor of Education. And the agreement that we have with our community partners is that we'll only introduce them to teachers that have a Canadian provincial teaching license, and then obviously a right to work in Canada. So despite your enthusiasm, we won't be able to help you connect with a community partner. Having said that, I do know that, especially now that there's a teacher crisis in Canada, there are communities and there are boards that will hire teachers without their education degree.
Okay.
They'll hire them. They call them like an unqualified teacher. So it's on a different pay scale, but it might be worth trying to connect with specific boards on your own, because we're bound by the agreement that we have with our community
Okay.
partners.
I got some
Um,
questions. So you're saying that, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for, making the effort to contact me. But, this is kind of the same answer that I got a couple of years ago when I tried. And I just want to say that the teacher crisis relates to, like not assessing workers, educators for the results they have with learners, as opposed to being a certified teacher. That's some, as a culture repair and learning specialist, I can tell you, you're
and
always
I
you're
totally
always
agree.
you're always going to be facing what you call
Yeah,
teacher crisis. But the other thing is,
yeah.
I don't know if you realize, but using the term unqualified teacher as opposed to educator, with different education or whatever. There's a lot of politically correct term you
I'm
can
just
use.
using the term the school boards use. It's not a term I've made up myself. It's what the school boards say.
Yeah,
That's what
so
the school boards use. But I don't work for a school board. I don't work for the Ministry of Education. I don't have the power or authority to change anything that's said.
yeah,
I
but
can
you
only
you
work
have
within
it more
the.
than I do because as a learning specialist, they won't hire me so I could do cultural repair work like this. Because during
Yeah,
during
yeah.
COVID, there was a lot of people who didn't have teacher certification and they had more positive results with the learners. And you would think the cultures of Canada in education would learn from that if they were learner centered, but it seems they have not. The last thing I
And
want to
that's why
say,
I'm saying,
maybe in relation to what you've been talking about so far, is you say that I can contact people that are not within your mandate where you must present that certification requirement. But have you not made a list to show you are learner centered of who they are, instead of leaving that work up to us independent educators?
yeah, and that just doesn't fall within our mandate. We're community led, so we we take feedback and guidance from the First Nations that we work with, and we do what they've asked us to do. So we're not looking to tell them how to do things and how to run their communities and how to run their schools. It's the other way around. They tell us this is how you can assist us. If you want to assist us, this is how you can assist us. And so because it's community led, we're doing what the communities are asking us to do. Now, having said that, like I said, I do know that there are northern schools or school boards that would accept teachers that don't have a provincial teaching license, but I don't personally know them. Like
Okay.
I just know that I just know from because I speak to educators, so I know from speaking to educators that there are educators out there and they don't have the paperwork to say they're a licensed teacher, but they are in schools and they are teaching.
Yeah, and the other part of the teacher crisis is having a lot of certified teachers who are not very qualified at what they do. So, like,
Yep.
for example, the email I'm working on is sending a vlog to Prime Minister Carney saying
Mm.
that it's important that money is allocated for education and mental health, but not to hire more people that are generic, because you're giving me a generic answer with the
Mm.
excuse that we're community driven. And because that's a very debatable statement, it sounds like it's a way to justify, the stagnation of avoiding problem solving. Let me almost finish here. But also, what I say in there is the money they put in should be oversight. Because if it's oversight of those already working in education and mental health, I tell you, most of the problems would be solved because there needs to be, reevaluations for certifications. And one of the way again is this learner centered, or is this, the path of least resistance for the teacher to have a less stressful day? Because let's say they don't have the skill sets that I have, let's say in my training as counselor or life skills coach or mental health advocate. Now, the last thing maybe that is a question maybe is that there is such a thing as school districts giving letters of permission for those that have university degrees, like more than one. It might not be education, but more than one, and work experience in education to still be working there. Is that a program you have? Because usually when I write things to you guys or other such organizations, as I mention, in a way I exceed the experience of certified teachers because it's not so limited in what their training was.
Yeah, no, I completely understand, but we don't. That's not a program that we have. No.
Okay. Now, if you guys are that linked to communicating with the First Nations or Indigenous communities, wouldn't you not say, hey, have you guys kind of thought about, you can even put them on probation, trying people with different certifications and different training, especially when schools struggle when it comes to things that teachers are not trained in, such as inclusion or mental health or counseling or being a learning specialist that actually promotes individuals finding how they learn, because how students, individual learners learn should be training that teachers get, and they really, really don't. And it's only when you work one on one and you're able to have skill sets that relate, let's say, to counseling, that you can discover these and then create a real emergent curriculum.
Yeah, we have asked the communities if they would like us to find or connect them with teachers without a teaching license, but at this point they have said no. It has to be all the communities who agree, and at this point the communities have said no. Only because most of the communities, we're only like one spoke in the wheel of recruitment, so they're using other recruitment efforts to find other staff.
So they
So
might
they're
be,
coming to
let's
us
say,
looking for something specific, but they're looking elsewhere for other needs for
they might
sure.
be finding social workers to work in schools or school counselors through other means, and you guys will specialize only in certified teachers then.
That's right. Like, for example, I do know that we have a community this year. There was a teacher who was both a certified teacher but also a certified counselor, and they hired them more for a counseling role than a teaching role because that filled a need that they had in their community. Now, the reason they found them through us, though, was because they were a certified teacher, but that wasn't what caught the community's eye. It was that they were a certified counselor, and they said, we have a need for that. And then they just said to us, can we hire them as a certified counselor, even though they're working with you to find a teaching role? And we said, well, that's up to the candidate. If the candidate wants to be a counselor, then of course they're like that's up to you guys to figure that part out. Yeah,
So,
so I know that they're not just looking for teachers in
so what I
their
find
communities.
strange, anyways, as a learning specialist, because a learning specialist, if I would send you my definition of it, which I guarantee is, you'd see this person is so passionate about rebooting the concept of learning within our species that this person wants to do their work extremely transparently because that's how they could be the most effective. That means it's easy to evaluate that person's work and they promise results. Uh, and yet, I live in a culture, whether it's indigenous or not, that actually is so afraid, and that's the certified teacher culture that is so afraid to have somebody role model the things that are required for cultural repair within the realms of education. So it's kind of sad. So of course your
Yeah.
answers are meant to be what you're supposed to say on your job, and I'm sure you can't, refer me back to somebody very higher up or that has the ear of all these communities that make use of your
No.
services and say, hey, how about we try this person? Because when I was in
Mm.
Japan, for example, I heard in the news there was a Canadian teacher who did bad things, and I approached that place because I was living close to there, and
Mhm.
I said, I'm coming back another time to offer volunteering. And I
Mhm.
said, and they said, oh, you don't understand. I understand. You're in the news. And there's like reporters always waiting for you guys to finish work and ask you more questions. I said, this is the perfect time for you to hire somebody like me who could promise results and who could put you on the map to restore
Mm.
your honor and your name, because then you would show that you got to be better than the norm when the news shows you were worse than the norm. And it takes
Mm.
somebody with the courage to say, I want my work to be observed and filmed and publicly available. And
Mm.
then because I care about, the next generation. And
Yeah.
yet their culture also stagnated like ours is still doing. And unfortunately, when people aim for the norm, every
Mhm.
generation the standards of the norm go down. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
so people that facilitate the norm, they're culture breakers, and it's an evolutionary dead end. Things
Yeah.
won't get easier for you on the job next year.
Yeah, no, 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 and I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, but yeah, but unfortunately, I don't have the power to make change.
Well,
Yeah,
you have a voice, and and not everybody's comfortable kind of making that change, but you do have power.
yeah,
I don't want you to say that just because your choices are to
mm,
facilitate the status quo that you don't have that choice or
mm,
power or voice. It's up to kind of wanting to maybe not be as popular but do the right thing. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
unfortunately, unfortunately,
yeah,
if I see a cartoon
yeah,
character do the right thing, I start crying in a movie because it's so rare to even see real people do the
yeah,
right thing. But when you say
yeah,
unfortunately, that's proof of my theory of HSD, which describes our devolution as a species because of a variety of human domestication syndromes, and it's so easy to measure it in even short conversations with people.
mm,
So think
mm.
about that. Think about
Yeah, I will,
the
yeah,
legacy you want to leave in your career, and do you want to shake things up a little bit but still maybe not so much that you can still pay a mortgage if you have a mortgage to pay. But a lot of people,
yeah,
they often put themselves in situations where they can't afford to lose a job by doing the right thing. And again,
yeah,
this is an example, of us
yeah,
devolving as a species.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure, for sure. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. Yeah, you gave me stuff to think about, so I appreciate. I wasn't expecting the call. I wasn't expecting to leave the call thanking you and with things to kind of mull over. So thank you.
Will
Yeah,
that be
and
the
thank
only
you.
thing, or will I also get an email to say, I didn't meet the criteria, something like that?
No, yeah, well, we can send an email as well. But like I said, I just saw how much effort you put into the application. I thought that sending an email seems really impersonal,
Well,
so I'd rather make the phone
I didn't
call.
put a lot of effort because, I had attempted to apply with you guys a couple of years ago. And
Mm.
and I expected, my theory predicts I'd be getting the same
Mhm.
response, and I am. So I
Mhm.
didn't put as much effort, but still I appreciate that you guys do, but I also wish that if you or somebody else above you sends me an email, that it might include referrals to places that would, let's say, enjoy a polymath, somebody who has skill sets other than just being a teacher. Because I have been a teacher when I was a spare. Sometimes I'm the only one there, and so I'm leading the class. So I have
Mhm.
the experience, and I love when the principal comes and watches me, because then they can learn stuff about how to create structure in a class, for example, which a lot of the teachers nowadays can't seem to do. And they seem to kind of do it too late too, when it's important to do it at the beginning of the year or the semester. So
Mhm.
yeah, so let me know if you guys decide to spend time before you give me an official response, which will at least include referrals to places that, let's say, that are not part of your program, or tend to, give people a chance and then evaluate them and then say, we're never letting you go. We're going to give you a letter of permission, or we're even going to sponsor something. Now, I also sent a letter today to a university saying, I'm not going to apply for a bachelor's in education. I'm doing a master's but some of your masters require teacher certification
Mhm.
and some don't. So let me know which one, because at my
Mhm.
age, I'm not going to go and get a degree when I already do better than certified teachers, and I'm willing to prove that. And that could
Mhm.
even be proven in a thesis research of a master's degree. So it's
Mhm.
time to stop thinking about career elitism and start thinking more about the learners if we, want to put signs up our schools that says every child matters.
Yeah.
So I hope to get an email from somebody that at least has some referrals so that I don't, have to keep doing research myself to find things that you guys know more about.
Yeah, I will ask. I'll ask one of my colleagues who works with communities to see if, or works directly with the communities to see if she knows of some. Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head, obviously, but I'll ask and see if she does know of some.
Okay, I'll get back to what I'm doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, no worries. Have
Okay,
a good evening.
you
Okay,
too. Bye bye.
thanks. Okay.